Welcome back to Late Edition. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. Joining us now from Scranton, Pennsylvania, Democratic Senator Bob Casey. He's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. He's just back from Iraq. Senator, thanks very much. We're happy you're back safe and sound. What's your assessment?
Thank you, Wolf.
Is it working, this so-called surge, or is it not?
Well, Wolf, I think the real question here with regard to the surge, or what's better known, I think, as an escalation of our troops, which I voted against way back in January and February. But the real question here is whether or not this increase in troops has led to political progress. And from where I sit, from the discussions we had in Iraq with Iraqi leaders, as well as what you can read in the public press, the Iraqi leadership have not done the job. There's no sense of urgency to achieve the political progress, which I think is the true measurement of whether or not the surge had the intended effect.
So you have lost confidence, if you've ever had any confidence, in the Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki?
I think I join a lot of Americans in really questioning whether or not he can create a government of national unity. I mean, I know we see this week where he had a meeting with some of the Iraqi leaders, but this kind of work should be done every day, month after month after month. And I'm afraid that we're reaching a point where the Iraqi leadership can't make the kind of progress that our troops deserve. The troops are doing everything we ask of them. They're in fact refereeing a civil war, which we should never ask them to do. But because of that valor and that sacrifice, I think the Iraqi progress has to match the sacrifice of our troops, and we haven't seen that yet. And I think the president has to, at long last, seriously consider, which he hasn't done before, a change in course.
Well, did you have a chance to meet with General David Petraeus, the overall U.S. military commander, the U.S. ambassador, Ryan Crocker? They are the ones that are going to be submitting this report to the president and to the Congress in mid-September.
Right, I met with both of them. General Petraeus gave us a briefing. Senator Durbin and I, we had dinner with both Ambassador Crocker and General Petraeus. And I sensed directly, and also by what they said about the progress they think the military is making, the frustration they feel that the Iraqi government isn't doing what it must do to create a government of national unity. So I think that that feeling is shared by both of them.
Well, will you have confidence, Senator Casey, excuse me for interrupting, will you have confidence in their recommendations when they make their recommendations in September?
Well, I'll consider them very carefully, as we all should. But I really worry about, because of what's happened with this White House, that the White House and the Bush administration will put a spin on the reports by both the general and the ambassador, which will be contrary to the reality. The reality right now is that our troops are refereeing a civil war, and they shouldn't be asked to do that. That's why we should transition this mission to focus on a couple of things. First of all, to kill terrorists in Iraq and outside of Iraq, all around the world. Secondly, we need a real surge in diplomacy more than anything else over there. We need to make sure that we protect our infrastructure, but we should be redeploying our troops, a phased redeployment in a responsible way over time, and that's the only way that the Iraqis are going to get the message that it's their government, they have to continue to fight the enemy, and our troops cannot continue to do all the bleeding and all the sacrificing and all the dying. It's about time the president changed course.
Senator John McCain has a very different assessment of what's going on, the stakes for the United States. Listen to what he told our Larry King earlier in the week.
If we declare a date for withdrawal, and that view is shared by many experts who, whether they agreed or disagreed on the initial entry into Iraq, that it'll be chaos and genocide in the region, and I think that they will follow us home.
All right, you want to respond to chaos and genocide, and the terrorists would follow us here to the United States?
Well, with all due respect to Senator McCain, he doesn't know exactly what will happen. No one does. So anyone who tries to tell you that is really misleading people. What we do know right now is that American forces, more than 3,700 now, getting to that number, have died. In Pennsylvania, over 170 lives have been lost, third highest death toll, and they've been asked to do what no fighting men or women have ever been asked to do, referee a civil war. And I know that there are members of the Republican caucus who read the Republican talking points and mouth what the president says. What they should focus on is what's best for the troops and our national security interests, and not what's best for the president. But I'm afraid you're seeing that in the Republican caucus. It's about time that they listen to the will of the American people, which is to focus the mission on killing terrorists and redeploying and doing that in a responsible way.
Well, under the best of circumstances, from your perspective, Senator Casey, what do you see happening realistically over the next year or two? Because we keep hearing reports from administration officials, military personnel, that if anything, they might reduce the troop level to where it was before the so-called surge. It's now about 160,000 U.S. troops. It could go down to 130,000, but that level is going to stay there at least for a year, if not longer.
Well, what I see is if we stay on this course, Wolf, we're going to see more of the same. When the Iraqi leaders, as they did in our meetings, which some of which were pretty tense, because Senator Durbin and I kept pressing on them the fact that the American people are losing patience, that our troops have to do all the sacrificing, and they talk about turning back the American clock to synchronize with the Iraqi clock. We can't do that. We have to make sure that this mission gets transitioned, that we focus on the urgent priority of killing terrorists and making sure that our troops don't have to do all the fighting and all the dying. But over and over again, when people say in the administration or when they say in the Iraqi government, give us more time, the only people who pay the price aren't politicians in Washington, but the troops and their families. And those troops have demonstrated bravery and valor and commitment. It's about time that the Congress and the President gets this policy right so we can then, I think, prove ourselves worthy of the valor of our troops and not worry about what this does to the President and not be spouting his talking points.
Senator Bob Casey, welcome back from Iraq. Thanks for joining us here on Late Edition.
Thank you, Wolf.